The last road into Maple Creek looked exactly as Ethan remembered, narrow, lined with old oak trees, and cracked in places where winter always won. As his pickup rolled past the faded welcome sign, a strange mix of comfort and regret settled in his chest. 15 years had passed since he'd left this small town with nothing but a backpack, a scholarship, and a promise to never look back. Yet here he was. His father's funeral had ended that morning. Friends, neighbors, and people Ethan barely recognized had offered quiet condolences before returning to their lives. Now the family house stood silent, waiting for him to decide whether to sell it or stay long enough to repair what time had broken. The porch creaked under his boots just as it always had. The wind carried the scent of freshly cut grass and blooming roses from the house next door. He froze. Mrs. Carter's rose garden. It had once belonged to the family whose daughter had been the center of Ethan's entire teenage world. Lily. He hadn't spoken her name aloud in over a decade. Back in high school, Ethan and Lily had been inseparable. They studied together beneath the old maple tree, rode bicycles through dusty back roads, and dreamed about futures bigger than their tiny town. They had promised that no matter where life took them, they'd find their way back to each other. Life had laughed at those promises. Money was tight after Ethan's mother passed away. His father worked long hours but still struggled to keep the lights on. When Ethan earned a scholarship across the country, everyone insisted he leave. Lily cried the night before he left but smiled through her tears. "Go chase your future," she'd whispered. "I'll be cheering for you." He had intended to return after college. Instead, internships became jobs, jobs became promotions, and the years disappeared faster than he realized. Phone calls became texts, texts became birthday messages. Eventually, even those stopped. Not because he stopped caring. Because every month that passed made reaching out feel harder. As Ethan unlocked the front door, dusk danced through beams of afternoon sunlight. Every room held memories. His mother's old piano, his father's worn leather chair, the marks on the kitchen wall showing how much he'd grown each birthday. He spent hours cleaning in silence. As evening settled over the neighborhood, he carried a box of old books onto the porch. That was when he heard footsteps. Soft, careful, familiar. He turned slowly. Standing by the fence between the two houses was a woman wearing a simple blue sweater, her long brown hair moving gently in the breeze. Time had changed her, but not enough to hide the smile he had once believed he'd never forget. "Lily," she gave a tiny laugh, though tears shimmered in her eyes. "I wasn't sure it was really you." Neither moved. 15 years of silence stood between them like an invisible wall. Ethan wanted to apologize for every unanswered message, every missed birthday, every broken promise. But no words came. Lily took one hesitant step closer until only the old wooden fence separated them. For a long moment, she simply looked at him, as if making sure he wasn't another memory that would disappear. Then, in a voice barely louder than the evening breeze, she smiled through watery eyes and whispered, "You still came." Those 3 words struck Ethan harder than any accusation ever could. They carried no anger, only hope that somehow had survived all those years. For the first time since returning home, he realized that maybe he hadn't come back only to bury his father. Maybe he had come back to face the one story he had never truly finished. Ethan stood speechless as Lily's words echoed in the quiet evening. "You still came." He swallowed hard, his throat tightening with emotions he had buried for years. "I should have come back sooner," he admitted. "I'm sorry, Lily. I thought about this town, about you, more times than I can count." Lily rested her hands on the old wooden fence that separated their yards. A gentle smile crossed her face, though sadness lingered in her eyes. "I know," she said softly. "At least, I hoped you did." For several moments, neither of them spoke. The familiar sounds of crickets and rustling leaves filled the silence. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence, it felt like two people searching for the right place to begin again. "So," Lily finally asked with a small laugh, "are you staying?" "I'm not sure," Ethan replied honestly. "Dad left me the house. I came planning to clean it out and put it on the market." Her smile faded ever so slightly. "I figured you would. You sound disappointed." She looked toward the old maple tree that still stood between the properties. "This neighborhood has been changing. Every time another family sells, another piece of our childhood disappears." Ethan followed her gaze. The tree still had the initials they had carved into its trunk during their senior year. E+L. Seeing them after all this time stirred memories he had never forgotten. "You remember that?" he asked. "I walk past it almost every day." He smiled for the first time since arriving in town. They spent the next hour talking as though they were trying to fill 15 missing years before sunset disappeared. Ethan told her about moving from city to city for work, building a successful career, and how achievements somehow felt emptier than he expected. Lily shared that she had become the town librarian after earning a teaching degree. She had returned home to care for her aging mother and simply never left. "I always thought you'd end up somewhere exciting," Ethan said. She shrugged. Maybe excitement isn't always a place. Her answer lingered in Ethan's mind. Just then, Lily reached into the pocket of her sweater. "I've been meaning to return something." She unfolded a faded photograph. It showed two 17-year-olds sitting beneath the maple tree, laughing at something outside the camera's view. Ethan recognized the day instantly, the afternoon before he left for college. "I can't believe you kept this." "I almost threw it away," she admitted. "More than once." "But you didn't." She shook her head. "No, some memories deserve another chance." As Ethan studied the worn edges of the picture, he noticed something written on the back in faded blue ink. "No matter how long it takes, I'll save your place beside me." His heart skipped. He looked up at Lily, unable to hide the emotion in his eyes. "You really waited?" Lily gave a bittersweet smile. "I stopped waiting for the future we planned," she whispered. "But I never stopped hoping that one day you'd come home, even if it was only to say goodbye." For the first time since returning to Maple Creek, Ethan realized this visit wasn't simply about revisiting old memories. It was about deciding whether the life he had built elsewhere was worth more than the home, and the first love, he had left behind. That night, Ethan barely slept. The faded photograph lay on the bedside table beside him, illuminated by the soft glow of the moon through the bedroom window. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lily standing by the fence, smiling through tears as she whispered, "You still came." By morning, he found himself walking through town before the sun had fully risen. Maple Creek looked smaller than he remembered, yet every corner held a memory. The old bakery still filled the streets with the smell of fresh bread. The hardware store where his father had bought nails every Saturday remained open, its owner greeting customers by name. Even the park where Ethan and Lily had spent countless afternoons looked almost untouched. Eventually, his feet carried him to the town library. The front door chimed softly as he stepped inside. Rows of neatly arranged books stretched across the room, and sunlight poured through tall windows, giving the place a peaceful warmth. Behind the front desk, Lily looked up from a stack of returned books. Surprise quickly turned into a genuine smile. "I was wondering if you'd stop by. I guess this place was always going to be my first stop today," Ethan replied. She laughed and walked around the counter. "Come on, there's something I want to show you." She led him to a quiet reading room in the back of the library. The walls were decorated with children's drawings, photographs of community events, and framed newspaper clippings about the town's history. One bulletin board caught Ethan's attention. In the center hung an old newspaper article about his high school science competition victory. Next to it were pictures of former students who had gone on to successful careers. "My picture is still here?" Ethan asked, genuinely surprised. Lily nodded. "I never took it down. You were the one who put it up." She smiled. "I've been organizing this room for years." Ethan stared at the article. Back then, he had dreamed of changing the world. Somehow, along the way, success had become endless meetings, airports, and hotel rooms instead of the purpose he once imagined. "You always believed in me," he said quietly. "I still do." Those words hit harder than any business award or promotion he had ever received. Just then, a group of children rushed into the library for the weekly reading program. "Miss Lily," they called happily. She greeted every child by name, helping one find a favorite book while comforting another who looked nervous about reading aloud. Ethan watched from across the room. This was the same Lily he had known in high school, kind, patient, and always putting others before herself. When the story hour ended, one little girl tugged on Ethan's sleeve. "Are you Miss Lily's friend?" He smiled. "I hope so." The little girl grinned. "She talks about someone who used to read books with her under the big maple tree." "Was that you?" Ethan looked toward Lily. She blushed, pretending to organize the books instead of answering. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ethan realized something that had taken him 15 years to understand. He had spent his life chasing success in places that never truly felt like home. Standing in that quiet library, watching the woman he had never really stopped loving, he began to wonder whether the future he had been searching for had been waiting in Maple Creek all along.